This is the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast, a production of the European Association of Professional Hypnotherapists. That's EAPH.ie.
And a very warm welcome to you to session number 23. And today our guest is Richard Kellow, hypnotherapist in Auckland in New Zealand. Originally from the UK, Richard Kellow has established himself as an expert hypnotherapist in Auckland, New Zealand. He has received numerous testaments and accolades from happy clients seeking his expertise in weight loss using the Sheila Grangers Virtual Gastric Band method. Richard has appeared on television in New Zealand and in the printed media. Listen and learn from an expert in his field on how you too can seek out a suitably qualified hypnotherapist and reap the benefits and enjoy the desired outcome. All on today's Professional Hypnotherapist podcast. Richard Kellow, welcome to the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast.
Thank you, Aidan. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And you're coming all the way from New Zealand.
I am indeed, yes, all the way down here at the bottom of the world.
What time is it there now, as a matter of interest?
It is 20 past 10 at night.
And it's 20 past 11 here in the morning. So you're ahead of us there. Now, Richard, you've become very infamous at this stage with regard to weight loss, using hypnotherapy for weight loss, and specifically, I think, the virtual gastric band.
That's right, yeah. So, although it's the virtual gastric band that I use, which a lot of people are probably familiar with the virtual gastric band, but, it really goes sort of more than just sort of saying, hey, look, you no longer want to eat anymore and chocolate's going to be like poison to you. Because if you were just to hypnotize somebody into saying, look, your stomach's the size of a golf ball, that's only going to stick for a certain amount of time. So really the whole process really is about making sure, from my point of view anyway, that the client is feeling confident, in control, and more empowered in so many other aspects of their life, that the weight then almost comes off as a lucky side effect rather than just sort of going through a gastric band procedure so that they can't eat anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you just tell us, specifically, what is the virtual gastric band?
So the virtual gastric band process is a 4-session program. Where essentially in the first session, the client, we go through their habits and behaviors, their goals, their whys, what they're looking to achieve from the process. And then the hypnosis session initially takes them through what would be a imaginary gastric band procedure. So they go into, hospital, how they maybe would be seeing themselves if they were to continue to gain weight. And then they go through the, meeting a surgeon and an anaesthetist and going through a procedure to actually fit a gastric band, a virtual gastric band, to imagine that their stomach is a lot smaller than it is. Like I said, if we just left it at that, that's not really, that's just going to be sticking a plaster on it at the end of the day. So really all that session really does is sort of sets everything up to give those sensations of feeling fuller for longer, satisfied on smaller portions, helps to cut out the mindless eating. But as I said, there are 4 sessions in total. So as we work through the other sessions, this is really where we make sure that we really drill down into cutting out those sabotaging behaviors of eating out of boredom or comfort or habit or stress, whatever any of those emotional ties may be, but also then looking towards focusing on that future them, exactly where they want to be in the future, just to make sure that we can create that permanent change in how they think and feel about food.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And, from looking at, I've been watching you on New Zealand television recordings, which you have demonstrated enormous success with this intervention. And specifically, there was one lady I came across, her name was Rebecca, and she lost something like 32 kilo.
That's right. Yeah, Rebecca, she's done very, very well. She's still doing very well. And Rebecca was actually referred initially by her GP, which was fantastic because, I mean, as a lot of people probably know in the hypnosis world, a lot of people in the medical world, they're sort of a bit of a 50-50. You know, some people in the medical world will really support hypnosis. Other people are still a little bit skeptical. So to have the referral from her GP was great originally. But the change in Rebecca, you know, it was more than just the weight. You know, it became much more than that. So it's just how she felt within herself. That the weight almost became sort of secondary. You know, I mean, she's now has a lot more energy. She's now a lot more confident within herself. She feels that she's actually really nourishing her body as opposed to abusing her body. And these are the things which actually become a lot more important.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, that's really important. That you give a full explanation of what you're actually doing with the client in terms of weight loss and the methodology that you use.
Yeah, so it's really sort of taking that main focus away from the number on the scale. So I mean, although it's important to have a goal, it really is sort of taking the main focus away from the number on the scales and putting that main focus onto making sure that they can feel good within themselves. Although, like it is good to have a goal, but not having that main focus being the scales.
Mm-hmm. And, oftentimes, Richard, we hear, people come present with looking to lose weight and gain a target weight. And I think you touched on it there briefly earlier, where, say, for example, somebody who has a lot of emotional stuff in their life, a lot of, maybe trauma. How do you work with that?
So if somebody's got, people don't eat really just for the sake of eating. There is always some kind of emotional, emotional drive behind it. And, even if they're not necessarily aware of it, they might be aware, they may not. It might be something which they've forgotten about or perhaps didn't even really feel was relevant. And really it's sort of saying to the subconscious, hey, look, I know that you feel that you may be doing the best job to keep me safe with, perhaps with holding on to this extra weight with the trauma that I've had in the past. But actually, really the best way to keep me safe is for me to be fit and lean and strong and healthy and confident. And really, these are all of the best ways to keep me safe rather than holding on to this extra weight with the, perhaps with the trauma that I've experienced in the past. So sometimes it's not necessarily about forgetting the trauma, but it's just about reframing it.
That's interesting. And what you're actually touching on there is I get the impression that you can actually talk to the unconscious or the subconscious mind. Yeah.
I mean, we've all got various different parts inside of us, and it's just talking to the subconscious, and because the subconscious is always doing whatever it thinks is best to keep us safe, and just thanking it for what it's been doing. And the subconscious is the emotional part of your mind. And unfortunately, when you've got the emotion versus the logical, analytical, conscious part of the mind, and when you've got the emotion versus the logic, emotion's always going to win, which unfortunately sometimes, is the driving force between when it comes up against people's emotional eating problems.
Mm-hmm. So, Richard, why are you so passionate about what you do?
So I guess that all started off for me maybe about 15 years ago now when I was living in London.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to see a hypnotherapist myself to help me to lose weight. So my background is finance. I used to work in...
Very interesting, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. So back in 2007, I was a mortgage underwriter just as the global financial crisis hit. So that was definitely a very, very interesting time. So, we were all being made redundant. very stressful time at that period. And then I got a job working in the stock market in London, which again was a very stressful time. And I saw my weight balloon, so I climbed the scales at about 100 kilos. It's about 30 kilos heavier than I am now anyway.
Okay. And
my my thing was chocolate. I could eat chocolate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as dinner instead of dinner. If I bought a packet of biscuits at the supermarket, they'd be gone by the time I got home. And I always knew that there was never any chocolate in my cupboards, not because I couldn't trust myself with it, but just because I'd have eaten it all. So it got to a point where I said, okay, I've got to do something. I've tried every diet in the book. Just had no willpower whatsoever. It'd be that whole kind of going to Weight Watchers, starving yourself the day of going to Weight Watchers, going to the toilet, taking off your jewelry, all of this business. Anyway, so I saw a hypnotherapist. I was just absolutely blown away with the results, and also how, for want of a better word, how easy it seemed. So I went back to see the hypnotherapist to help him, to get him to help me for some motivation to exercise, which granted that kind of goes up and down a little bit at the moment. Also to help me to stop smoking and to deal with the stress of my job. So I kind of had this whole big sort of change within myself. And it was on the back of that I just sort of thought, okay, do you know what? I don't know what I just need a break from London. And moved to New Zealand, and that was 10 years ago. Uh-huh. So that was sort of the whole change. And when I got here, I sort of reevaluated my life and thought, actually, what do I want to do? I'm good at what I do within finance, but it's not really something which I guess really sparks joy in what I want to do. And that's when I retrained as a hypnotherapist.
Mm-hmm. And was the motivation to train as a hypnotherapist, did that just spring out of the fact that you yourself went through hypnosis for a particular issue, weight loss, or was it some other reason?
It did come about from my previous experience with the weight loss. But like I said, it was really when I got to New Zealand and I sort of evaluated what I wanted to do. And I thought, I know that I don't want to work in finance anymore. And sort of thinking, what really is it that I want to do? And it just sort of was playing in the back of my mind, thinking, actually, this really is I know this is a tool that can help a lot of people. I know how effective it is. I've experienced it firsthand. And actually, I think this is something which I want to pass on to, be able to pass on to other people, to help other people with. Mm-hmm. And that's when I decided to retrain here. So it really was based on my past experience. Okay. I'd never heard about it before.
Yeah. You obviously have an interest in people.
Yeah, 100%.
And talking about people, who is would you say, the most influential person in your life, and how have they impacted you?
Oh, crikey. Sometimes you hear this question and people say, the most influential person is, I don't know, Freddie Mercury or something like that. Mm. So the most influential person in my life, I'd probably have to say, is no longer in my life at the moment, unfortunately, is my grandmother.
Okay.
But she was probably the most influential person in my life, just because she had a very she was very resilient, I guess. So yeah, very resilient person, very strong work ethic, and just a real strong, just really instilled that fact of you can do whatever you want to do and you have to believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Yeah. So she gave you that imparted to you that confidence that's necessary.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay. Actually, you can do it.
You can do it, and that's important to believe that you can do it. If you had one superpower, Richard, what would it be? If you could have one superpower.
Oh, if I could have one superpower, it would be to fly. So, and I guess this is one thing that I suppose that actually a lot of people probably wouldn't know about me, is that when I was younger, I actually wanted to be a vet. I used to volunteer at the Home of the World Parrot Trust. So birds were sort of my thing. So I used to volunteer looking after birds, and I've just always had this, I guess, a bit of an affinity with birds. So, I'd love to be able to fly if I could.
That's
So
wonderful.
just a bit of one, I guess.
Excellent.
So,
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, I was just going to say, there's none of this invisibility cloak or mind reading or anything like that. Yeah, just, to be able to fly.
Excellent. And probably fly back to the UK every now and then.
Yes, that's it, without having to wear a mask on an aeroplane. So,
Now, in terms of the world of hypnotherapy, and maybe you've been asked this question many, many times. What's the biggest misconception do you think that people have about the field of hypnotherapy?
probably that it is mind control.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't want anybody messing with my mind. I don't want you to do anything. Don't make me. And I'm sure a lot of hypnotherapists have heard this so many times before. I don't want to, be made to bark like a dog or quack like a duck,
Or cluck like a chicken.
Yeah, cluck like a chicken. Yeah, all of that business. And I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. Or else, that I'm just going to be knocked out cold, put to sleep, something like that. So, I think those are probably two of the biggest misconceptions about hypnosis or hypnotherapy, that people are going to be knocked out cold and made to quack like a duck.
Yeah. So it's and if you were to describe, let's say, the whole profession of hypnotherapy, what words would you use to describe it?
Inclusive. And I think the profession is very inclusive. Healing. Yes, very inclusive and healing profession, and with a great sense of community, I feel.
Say again, the last bit again. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. A great sense of community.
Great sense of community. Excellent. Wonderful. Now, just to go back to the weight loss or weight target, weight control, or whatever words you like to choose to use. If, for example, there's somebody out there, and I'm sure there are lots of people out there who will be listening to this podcast, and they have a weight issue, and they're at their tether's end, as we say. What advice would you give to them right now?
Really, just ditch the scales. So, I mean, the scales can be your friend or your foe at the end of the day. Now, some people are really motivated by the scales, but also a lot of people want to get to a certain weight so that they can have more energy, so they can fit into their clothes, so that they can, bend down to tie up their shoelaces. But ultimately, if you've got all of these other non-scale victories, it kind of almost doesn't matter what weight you are, if you've achieved all of these things anyway. So, because there's always going to be day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month fluctuations, depending on maybe hormones, salt levels in the body, what position the moon is in the sky. So I just say, ditch the scales. And, as long as you know that if you've got a great relationship with food, then the weight is going to be coming off ultimately.
Excellent. And maybe one final question would be, what's your favorite self-care practice, if you had one? How do you look after yourself as a therapist?
So I like to float. I don't know if you know those flotation tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of them, or
I've heard of them. I haven't. I've never experienced one, but I've heard of them.
This is this actually almost gets me into quite a self-hypnotic state. So I can't remember there's some kind of I can't remember what kind of salt or minerals are in them, but yeah, they're basically total sensory deprivation. So you go in, you close yourself into this pod. It's complete darkness, complete silence, and the temperature of the water is body temperature. So when you're in a bath, for example, you can sort of feel the difference in the temperature between the skin that's in the water and obviously your skin that's in the air. But because this water is body temperature, you just can't feel anything, and you're floating within this water with the minerals that are there. So you're completely suspended. There's no pressure points on your body. You can't see anything. You can't hear anything. And your body is just, obviously, everything is just body temperature, because that's what the water is. And whilst you're in there for about an hour, just floated, suspended in this water. And you actually get into a really deep sense of meditation. And it's actually really quite amazing how much your mind can open up, process through what's been happening in the day or the week. And like I said, it's the closest I feel that I can get to in sort of getting into a really deep state of self-hypnosis. It's actually really nice. A really nice way for self-care, much better than a massage, much better than meditation, I feel. Yeah, so that's one thing that I like to do.
Excellent. That's a wonderful activity. And maybe sometime I'll experience that. Just something that occurred to me, another question, if I may. Um, given all your success in terms of with your clients, I'm sure you've had success in other areas other than weight control or weight loss. What advice would you give to an aspiring hypnotherapist, or maybe an established hypnotherapist out there, in terms of how they can be just as successful as you, if that doesn't sound too brave, too bold a question?
Yeah, I know, because sometimes it does feel like am I just just going day by day, really. So yeah, it is. I suppose it is that whole kind of just believe that you can do it, and if you're not 100% sure that you can do it, just do it anyway. Because I think Sheila Granger, who's a good mentor of mine. I think she always says, put your big girl's pants on, which
yes,
obviously would be my big boy's pants, but just do that, and just get out there and do it, because if you don't 100% know, there's lots of things which I've thought, okay, I don't know if I can actually do this, either go to the media with this story, or maybe update a certain thing, or but then I've just thought, okay, I'm just going to put myself out there and do it. And if people don't come, or if nobody responds, nobody would have responded if I didn't do it anyway. So it's just kind of, okay, just put yourself out there.
And you mentioned the media. You have a great rapport with the media in New Zealand.
Yeah. And again, it literally just has been a case of knocking on doors, I guess. And it's going to them with a story, which perhaps is something which, a human interest story. I think, like you said, with the one about Rebecca, the part about me within that story was probably only 2 paragraphs. The actual story was Rebecca, rightly so, because Rebecca was the one that actually has achieved so much. But it wasn't a sales story on, hey, look at this hypnotherapist, look how great this hypnotherapist is. No, it's a story about Rebecca, which actually, here's 2 paragraphs about the hypnotherapist that helped her along the way. But of course, that still really benefits me.
Of course.
Because when people read her story, they then look to see how that happened. But the media, the press and the media like a story that isn't a sales pitch, I guess. So, they don't want me going to them saying, hey, can you write all about me?
Yeah.
They want to, they want to write,
The human
that
interest
isn't
story.
human interest story.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that was wonderful, Richard. Thank you so much. What would be, maybe you'll give us your contact details, please.
Yeah, sure. So my website is www.kellowhypnotherapy.com. That's KELLOW. And my Facebook is facebook.com/Auckland Hypno.
Excellent. So that was Richard Kellow, a hypnotherapist in Auckland, New Zealand. Thank you so much, Richard.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You have been listening to the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast, and I have been your host, Aidan Noon. Why not pop over to eaph.ie, where you will find solutions for you there. And did you know that the Professional Hypnotherapist podcast is now among the most popular top 20 hypnotherapists podcasts available? That's blog.feedspot, that's FEED spot.com/hypnosis_podcasts. Thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate you listening. So until next time, it's bye-bye for now.